Yes, guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Kev from the gym. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Kev from the gym, TikTok, Kev from the gym 10. Got some content going on there. Right, this video is a bit of a recap on the weekend fight. We had Frazer Clarke versus jeamietkv for the British heavyweight title. And more than just a recap, I do want to go into a little bit of depth about Frazer Clarke and what I call the curse of the amateurs. Okay. Now, firstly, good fight. TKV definitely deserved winner, in my opinion. Frazer Clarke started very fast, very aggressive, probably more aggressive than he usually does. He wasn't boxing as much. He did load up quite a lot very early. And after sort of round 3 or 4, I was saying to the guys on the live stream, he just looked spent. He looked like his gas tank had drained. And TKV, who's fit to go 12 anyways, started to apply the pressure, was doing some good work on the inside, the double left hook to the body, left hook to the head. And he just took over the fight, basically. Pushed Frazer back, made it a bit of a slugfest. And Frazer just couldn't get into his boxing, couldn't get into his rhythm. And he just looked like the gas tank just ran empty. So TKV, a deserved winner. Happy for him because he's a local to me in Tottenham, from the same country as me as well. We've got mutuals down the road, similar gym. So, big up to TKV. And for Frazer, where do we go from here? It's a tricky one, difficult one, because he's lost a couple of times now at British level. And for someone who's an Olympian, an Olympic bronze medal, he would expect to have done better in his career thus far. So, but we're gonna unpack it a little bit. We're going to talk about the curse of the amateurs. Right, so let's break this down. Okay, we're going to look at Frazer Clarke's amateur career. And now on BoxRec, he's got listed, 90 fights. Okay, so he's got listed on there 90 fights or 89 fights. Now you have to remember, BoxRec only shows or only has record of the elite fights. So the fights that he's had at elite level, basically the national amateur championships, the sort of international tournaments, the ones where he's representing Great Britain or representing England, basically. Now, as a coach, I'm an amateur coach and a professional coach, but as an amateur coach in England, we have a slightly different system that we use when we're doing matchmaking. And on that system, I'm not going to log in and show it, but on that system, you can see everyone's record. Every amateur boxer in the country, you can see their record, how many fights they've had, how many wins, how many losses. So although on here it's showing 80 fights or 79 fights, in reality, Frazer Clarke has had around about 150 amateur fights from what I've seen on the system, from my memory. He's had around about 150 fights. Now, 150 fights, when you're talking about the Russian fighters and the Eastern European fighters, the Usyks, the Lomachenkos, the Bivols, Beterbievs, in that side of the world, maybe it sounds normal, but I tell you now, 150 amateur fights, it's a lot of fights for one, but as a heavyweight, it is a hell of a lot of fights. It's very rare that you get heavyweights, especially heavyweights in Britain or in Europe, for that fact, who racks up about 150 amateur fights. So that's a lot of wear and tear. And as I say, in the amateurs, there is less wear and tear generally. By the end of the day, you are a heavyweight, even with 12 ounces and only 3 rounds per fight, it's still quite a lot of damage. Okay, so 150 fights is a lot. Now, if you break it down, where I think Frazer Clarke went wrong, and we're going to go all the way down to the first bout they've got on record on BoxRec. In my opinion, Frazer Clarke overcooked it in the amateurs. He stayed too long as an amateur. And he waited 3 Olympic cycles. He waited 3 different Olympic cycles. Now, an Olympic cycle is 4 years, okay? He waited 12 years in order to finally, be able to represent Great Britain and try and get an Olympic medal. In my mind, maybe he felt that if he did get that medal, that would propel him as a pro. But, waiting 12 years before you get to that stage and then turn over, that's a lot of mileage, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of training. It's just a lot of wear and tear on your body, quite frankly. So, let's look at it here. So he starts in 2009. So against Sean Turner, that's his first sort of season as a senior. So you can see in 2009, he's representing England. Okay, he has a good couple of fights at international level. He boxes Tony Yoka. He has a fight against Joshua Club Show. He represents England at the Commonwealth Games. So more or less in 2010, he's already an elite amateur. He's an elite heavyweight amateur. So he's boxing for England. He's on a national squad. He's in and around the GB setup. This is 2010. Okay. Right. So we know in 2012, or in 2012, excuse me, we know in 2012, Joshua represents England or GB. So we know in 2012, Joshua represents GB at the Olympics, and everything falls into place for Joshua. Okay, one, he's got the look, and at that time, heavyweights, we needed a bit of a refresh after the Klitschko era. We needed something fresh, brand new. The Olympics was in London, in England, so he had that home advantage, all eyes on him. It was just, everything fell into place. It was made for a superstar. That's sort of a one-off. But Frazer Clarke was in and around that GB setup, and they picked Joshua to essentially be the number one for Great Britain to go to the Olympics. So Frazer's number 2 at that point, okay? Now, around about 2011, Joe Joyce turns over, well, he starts his amateur career, and he actually beats Frazer Clarke in the finals, in the national finals. Okay, so he's in and around the England and GB setup, and you'll see that they compete quite a few times. Okay, so Joe Joyce and Frazer Clarke compete quite a few times. Joe Joyce beats him again, 2012 national finals. So again, we've got AJ, the number 1 at GB in 2012. He's at the Olympics representing GB. Joe Joyce and Frazer Clarke are number 2 and 3. Okay, so they box a couple of times. Frazer Clarke is still in and around the GB and England squad. He's doing a lot of the international tournaments. He's doing the ABAs. He loses again in 2014 in the national finals to Joe Joyce again. So Joe Joyce is the number 2. Frazer Clarke's the number 3. But they're still in and around the squad. Frazer Clarke is still representing GB. He wins the European title against Tony Yoka in the semis, Vianello in the finals. So he's got good experience. He wins the nationals in 2015 against Natty Negreña. Big up Natty, we know him as well. So he's got good experience. He's in and around the GB setup and the England setup, but he's basically number 3. Joe Joyce is number 2. Joshua was number 1, and he's turned over now in around about 2013, 2014. Okay, so now we get to the 2016 Olympics. So we get to the 2016 Olympics, and Joe Joyce gets selected as the GB rep. So he goes through the qualifiers. He does a couple of WSBs in 2013, 14, 15, I believe. Boxes Usyk and what have you, and then he does the Olympics 2016. In 2016, Frazer Clarke, he's the number 2. And he's doing the WSB again. He's going to international tournaments. He does the Europeans again. So he's representing England, representing GB, but he's the number 2 in 2016 behind Joe Joyce. Now, instead of turning pro at that stage, right, you've done 2 Olympic cycles. You've given 8 years at least to GB and to England squad. Instead of turning over at that point, he decides, and he would have been in his mid-20s at that point, he decides he's going to try and do one more Olympic cycle. He's now going to be the number 1 guy because Joshua's turned pro. Joe Joyce has done the Olympics 2016. He's going to turn pro. So now Frazer Clarke is the number 1 guy. Right, he decides, I'm going to do another 4 years. 2020 we'll do the Olympics. Well, guess what? There's COVID. The Olympics doesn't come around until 2021. Okay, and then in 2021, he boxes. He gets a bronze medal, losing to Jalalov in the semi-finals. Now, remember, in that time, there are a lot of other heavyweights that are in and around the England squad who would have become number 2 and number 3 behind Frazer Clarke. And instead of waiting around for this Olympic cycle or the next Olympic cycle, they decide, right, I'm going to turn pro. One example of that is Daniel Dubois. He was young when he turned pro, 18, 19 years old, just turned senior. He was in and around the GB squad. He could have competed with Clarke to be that number 1 guy to box at the Olympics 2021. but he decided, and maybe he got, you know, a big signing on fee from Frank Warren to do so, but he decided, I'm not going to wait around. I'm going to turn pro, and I'm going to, you know, build my career and take the steps that way. And sometimes if things don't fall into place for you, you've got to make that kind of decision. You know, waiting around 2, 3, 4 cycles, Olympic cycles, that's again 8, 12 years. And in that time, you're boxing at the elite level, you're having tournaments, it's a lot of wear and tear on your body as a heavyweight. And then he turns over in his early 30s with a bit of mileage. And in his mind, he's hoping, right, I'm an Olympic bronze medalist. This is a huge platform for me. It can propel me. I can be the next Joshua. I can have that kind of springboard. Joshua was a one-off. Joshua was an absolute one-off. Like I said, a gold medal in London, in your hometown. He had the looks at a time that, you know, the heavyweights, we needed something else. The casuals needed something else from boxing. It just kind of fell into place. You can't, in my view, where Frazer's gone wrong is you can't try and predicate what your career might be like based on what someone else has done or the success that someone else has had. You've got to think what's best for your career, what's best for your path. We've seen Daniel Dubois make the same decision. We've seen Moses Satama do it. Moses Satama, undefeated as an amateur, he only boxed as a youth. He hasn't even had a senior bout as an amateur, but he said, right, I'm not going to wait around. Again, maybe he was incentivized to do so. Maybe he got a big signing on fee from Frank Warren, who knows. But he decided it's in his best interest to turn pro and to, you know, to forge a career that way. And big up Demar Thomas, who's the #1 at GB now at super heavyweight. And maybe Moses would have been competing with him to see who goes to the Olympics in 2026, but he didn't want to do that. So, you know, it's a lesson. It really is a lesson. This is a lesson for all amateur boxers, and particularly those at heavyweight, I would say. Now, I do want to say, you know, big up Frazer Clarke. He's one of the nicest guys in boxing by everyone's account. I've met him once or twice in Loughborough. He's always been very pleasant, very nice, gentle giant, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, no disrespect to him. And I want to see him come back stronger and do well and have a successful pro career. But it's just from my observation and my opinion, I do think that he spent too much time in the amateurs sort of chasing that Olympic story, and maybe gave some of his best years and his best moments, you know, to the gym, to the amateur system. And that can sometimes have an effect on you. So, you know, we'll see how he bounces back. I always say to the amateurs at my gym, or just in the circuit in general, is yes, you want the experience and you want to try and be a good amateur because you do get good experience from it and it is a good foundation. But you don't want to be the best amateur and a bad pro. You know, if you do want to turn pro eventually, use the amateurs as a springboard, learn the experience, take the wins, take the losses, take the robberies, take all of that, get the experience. And then when you feel like you're ready, you do what's best for you. And if that means, you know, you're close to being in a GB squad or being an England rep or whatever, then that's fine. And if that means, you know, you've got enough experience and you want to turn over and try that route, that's fine also. But you have to try and do what's best for you and take all things into account. You know, don't just assume because someone else had one success or this was this person's path that yours is going to be exactly the same, because it doesn't always work that way. So that's a lesson to be learned. But as I say, for Frazer Clarke, I hope he can come back and come back stronger. I don't know who he'd face or what kind of level opponent he'd have next. You know, at English level, he's probably too good for those guys. I think he probably beats the likes of Johnny Fisher and what have you. But at British level, you know, he's beaten Dave Allen. He's obviously lost to TKV, but he is in and amongst that level. I don't know if David Adeleye is a good matchup for him because he's very explosive, but you know, there are question marks about both of their gas tanks, so maybe that's an interesting fight. But we'll see. For TKV, credit to him. He goes on now, he moves on. I want to see him versus Dave Allen for the British. I think Dave Allen is a ticket seller at the end of the day, so that could be a good fight in Sheffield or in an arena somewhere, Doncaster, and TKV can make some decent money from that. And he has a good chance, in my view, of beating Dave Allen as well. I think he can box him. He's got quick enough feet. He's good enough on the inside, but you don't want to be on the inside too long because you probably give Dave Allen a chance. But if you're on the outside and you just box Dave Allen, use your fast feet, your quick jab, he's not really going to catch you with the single shots, I don't believe. So, you know, that's just my little breakdown, my synopsis, my review, Frazer, Clarke and TKV. If you've liked the video, please like the video. Please do like, comment and subscribe. Okay, make sure you do, because that helps the algorithm and it does help the channel. And yeah, more videos coming soon. Peace.